Back again, and welcome back to another short video which has been requested by someone stating they would like to see a different way of defining routes without using those YAML configuration files, as it seems that they're not all that popular with everyone. So this video is really about an alternative way of defining those routes, which we can then pass to that set route method. So let's put a little bit of context on what I'm saying. So if I go to let's close this down. Let's go to our public index file so you can see what's going on. So this is our bootstrap index file, and this is pretty much where we define our configuration or load up our framework so we can then build our app. And we've got a method down in that is called set routes, and this method takes in the first argument. It takes in that YAML configuration which we've defined within our config file, which is these routes right here. So let's close this down a bit more space. So these are our routes that we've defined using this YAML file, but I'm going to return it as a regular PHP array, so you see the alternative way of doing it without using these YAML without using this YAML configuration. So I'm going to keep that open because I'm going to take some of what I've defined in here to define my array in PHP, because you're going to see that it's just the same. It reads exactly the same, it's just a different syntax. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is, you can see I've got a split screen set up, and I've got the landing page or the home page on the right. If I reload it, you can see nothing really happens, it just reloads. So if I get rid of this first argument from our set route method, we're going to actually get an error because we've taken away that first argument, which is a required argument. If I reload again, you can see we get an error. So we're going to fix that with an alternative way of defining our routes. So if we go to our directory structure, let's go to our app directory. We're going to create a new directory within this directory, and we're going to call it routes. Within that, I'm going to create a class file called routes as well.php. Let's close that down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my route within a class which is going to contain a single static method which is going to return those routes we're going to pass to that method in our index file. So let's just build this out. So why is this so wide? So let's say PHP, let's do all the declare stuff, strict types equal 1, namespace is going to be app routes. So remember, we're within our app directory, and we've just created that routes directory. So that's the namespace, and the name of our class is going to be routes, right? Same as our directory. Now I'm going to create one public static method which is going to return an array of routes. It's going to be public function, and for the purpose of this demonstration, you can call this whatever you want, by the way, but for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to call this function my routes, something generic like that. And all I'm going to do is return a multi-dimensional associative array, which is how we define these routes, right? Just like so. So if I reload this page again, you can see we're still getting that error. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to actually pass this class that we've just created. I'm going to reference this method within that method from our index page. So if we go back to our index.php, go to our set routes method, we're going to do something like, let's actually bring the class in first. Say use app routes, just like so. Now, because it's a static method, we can just say routes colon my routes, just like so. what we're getting right here. Let's reload. What we get? Non-static method. So we didn't declare that method as static. So that's my bad. So it's going to be static, public static method, right? And that error should clear up in our editor. Reload the page. You can see that error is gone completely. But obviously, we are not returning anything just yet. We've just got an empty array sitting there, which is what our set route method is expecting, an array. So we're going to define our route. We're going to define our routes. My apologies. We're going to define our routes similar to how we've got it laid out in here, but in pure PHP array. So the first route I want to define is that home route or home page, the page that we were just on. And I will get to that point is we declare an empty string, just like so. We're going to assign that to another array, which is going to be our parameters. So we're going to define our parameters or controller, the first one. And what controller do we want to actually dispatch? We want to dispatch our home controller. Let's fix that properly. Our home controller, right? And we don't need to suffix it with the controller string because we've already taken care of that within our router class. So all we need to do is say home. And the second key we're going to define is the action key. And that's going to point to the default method that is going to be invoked when we go on to, for instance, localhost. That's going to load our home controller and invoke that default action, which we're going to assign as index. Right, just like so. So if I reload this page, you can see we're now reloading the page that we had before we started. So let's actually go and look at the controller. So in our controllers directory, we got our home controller right there. Let's bring this down. So we're creating a object. Well, we're creating a controller object, which is our home controller, and we're going to be invoking this actual index method, which is what we've defined as our action, which is the index, which is exactly the same as what we've got in our YAML, right? So we've got an empty string, and we define our controller, which is our home controller, and action, which is index action. So that is essentially an alternative way of returning routes within just pure PHP. Now I'm going to convert all of these that we've got into this PHP class, and that is how you can then pass this actual method to the method within the index file. So you don't then have to work with YAML file if you don't really want to. You could just return arrays, because that is how this framework is set up. It's not like a Laravel or a Symfony where you uses a get method and pass callbacks. That is not how this framework is set up. We use arrays which then get returned, which then you pass to the set route method, which then execute that object, that router class, which instantiate that router class and pass in all the required argument to build our routes or dispatch our routes, right? I hope that makes sense. So the second route I'm going to define is our login route. So at the minute, if I do /login, you can see we haven't got a login route, so we're getting an error as well. So let's define that route. Now I want to define the route as login, right? So when I say login, I want to execute the login controller. Well, it's not called login controller, so let's just do it. So just assign it to a next array, and within that I'm going to say the controller is security, because that is the controller that I want to, that's the object that I want to create, the security controller. So security, and the default method that I want to invoke within this controller is also going to be the index action or index, right? So if I reload my page again, we should be loading up our login page. So load, and there you go. So now we've defined our login route. We've set the controller to the security controller, and we're going to be invoking that index method as default, right? So again, back into our controller, you see we've got our security controller which does our logging in, and the default method is that index method. It's down there. So this is the default method which is going to execute execute the login logic and show that login form. Now I've got a video coming up after this one where I walk you through all of these new method or these new chaining method that you can see, which is probably something you've not seen just as yet. I've done a video last night. I'm going to post that, so don't worry if you're looking at this and thinking, what the heck is that? I've not seen that before. I've done a video where I've explained the changes that I've made and how I've gone about reusing or redoing some of what I was doing before. So stay tuned for that one, for that video. It's coming up after this because I've done the video. I'm going to be editing it tonight and try and post it out as well. So stay tuned for that. So that's pretty much let's close this down. That's pretty much all we define all the routes that we've got in our YAML file using a normal PHP array. So the second one that we've got is our register route. So if I say register, again, that route does not exist. So we're going to go ahead and create that within our new routes.php file. So it's going to be register, and the parameters is going to be controller, which is going to point to the registration controller, and the action, which is the method, is going to be register. That is the only method I think I've got within that class, and it's going to be the default action that get invokes when we put register within our URL, just like that. So if I reload this page now, you can see now we get our registration controller, which is invoking this register method. So if I go back to there again, we got our registration controller, and the only method that we've got is our register action method. Forget about the suffix. Again, in the video that's coming up after this, I've explained the suffix that we've got right here and how we're doing it and why we're doing it, right? So again, we've defined our registration controller and we're invoking this register method by default. So when you type in register, this is pretty much what you then see. Again, you can set whatever method you want to be the default method that get called when you visit a route. You can set it to whatever you want. So I'm hoping at this point to get in the gist of how we're defining these routes, but I actually want to go ahead and define some of the dynamic routes so you can see exactly the difference. Oh, there's no difference. It's the same implementation in the YAML file, just we're going to be doing it in this PHP array. So if I go back to the home page and I click sign in, you can see we're going to our login page. I click on register, it takes us to our registration page, right? If I click the logo at the top, we get another error because that takes us into our admin section, which we have not defined the routes for yet. And unlike these that we've just done, our admin section uses dynamic routes. So let's go back into our YAML file and I'll show you what I'm saying. These are what we call dynamic routes, because you got an admin section, you could be creating routes after routes, which is not efficient. So we needed a way of dynamically creating those routes without actually physically creating them. And we're using preg match and preg replace and capture group to essentially do that job for us. So these are what we call variables. They're wrapped in curly braces, and we define a namespace, and any class we've created under that namespace, which is admin, will inherit these dynamic routes, so they get created on the fly, right? So if I take the key out of this one, copy it, go to our routes PHP, going to make that the key of our array, of our associative array, and we're going to assign it some parameters, and the parameters that we're going to assign it is a namespace. So say namespace, and we're going to say that's going to be admin. Now by default, it automatically inherits controller and the action. What am I saying? So we're going to actually reload this page, and you're going to see that we've now, well, it might prompt us to log in, but effectively we've now created that admin route with these dynamic variables, which is going to create those routes for us on the fly. Right, so if I reload, you can see that it booted us out because it wants us to log in. And this is what I'm going to show you guys next, the middleware which is actually doing this, because this is being done by a middleware. It detected that we've not got an active session and we're trying to access a protected route, so it kicks us out saying that you have to log in before we can get there. But luckily we're building this, we've got the credentials to log in, so I'm going to hit the login button just like so, and there we go, it's logged us into our admin section, right? And that is being done via this admin route that we've just defined. So if I scroll around, you can see that I can pretty much go to roles. So we've got admin, which is the namespace that we've defined. We've got a role controller, which is and then we got our index method, right? You can see that we've not created these routes. These are all being done for us dynamically under the admin namespace. So again, we can go permissions. We got permissions there. Forget about the styling. I'm still working on the styling. I mean, that's not really that important at the moment. But it's just to show you that we can navigate around. Again, navigate around or admin without creating these routes. And this contact page, this error that you're seeing, is because we've not got a database or a database name in our database by the name of contact. That's something else I'm working on, which is not complete, so don't worry about that as well. But you can see we got our users page, and within our users page we can access an edit route. So if I click on this edit button, you're going to get the next error, and that's because we need to add a next route that deals with the ID, the dynamic ID within that route, which is what we've got in this YAML file, which is exactly the same. So let's copy that and let's create a next array set, and we're going to assign the key as, go away, make the key what we've just copied. So it's quite similar to what we've got right here, with the exception of we've got that ID token in the middle, which represent the ID of the object, right? And let's assign that some parameters, which is going to be the namespace, which is going to be admin, right? So if we reload this page, you can see now we've got that single object, that single user within our database. This is really annoying. This is annoying. Let's just clear this off quickly so you guys can see this a little better. Let's go to our templates and let's go to admin, users, index. Let's just disable this sidebar temporarily so we can see what we're doing. That's some CSS issue that I've got right there, which I need to sort out. Right, so not to worry about that. Let's just reload. That's not gone. Why are we not gone? Oh, it's not gone because I'm not on the right page. My bad. So that's on the index, not index, the edit page. Close that down. And let's get rid of this sidebar temporarily. Let's just comment that out down to this point. Save, reload. Now that's gone, right? So now we can see a little better. So this route contains an ID token which allows us to display singular objects like what we've got right here. So if I go back, get the next one. See, we can display that singular object with that dynamic route that we've put in with that ID token. So I hope, guys, you see what I'm doing. Let's close these down. Within our routes class, we're simply just returning an array of what we've already defined within this YAML file. That's pretty much all it is. I mean, this is the best way of actually return, or the way I recommend that you return your routes. I've already done a lot of the hard work behind the scenes implementing these, and using YAML was my idea of introducing a different kind of technology within our application so we can learn how different stuff integrate. But again, I understand that it's not for everyone, and we just want to sometimes use native PHP to do certain stuff, and this is the alternative to this is the alternative to that YAML configuration. So I hope that helps. You can pretty much build on this, and you can pretty much convert what we've got in that YAML file within this PHP array, and that might be something you might want to go and do. It's pretty simple. You look at the structure, you see what we've got in our YAML file, and you could pretty much finish this off yourself. Just practice on it, and you could pretty much build your own routes as well, right? Whether it be a dynamic route or a static route, you can look at what I've done, look at the example, study it, and try and implement some of your own routes and controller classes and see if it works, right? And let me know down in the comment how that goes. If you find this implementation better than the YAML configuration, what we can then do is provide the option to switch between either depending on what you like. So I hope that gives you a little bit more insight on using PHP within that set route method instead of using the YAML file. So thanks a lot, guys. Stay tuned, because I'm going to be doing a next short video on how we implement middleware within the controller, which we can then execute hooks before and after we call an actual controller method. So stay tuned for that one, because I'm about to do that one right now.